Hello everyone! As you know, spooky season is just around the corner, if not already here. So let's go ahead and turn some of these dollar store items into spooky, creepy, cottagecore vintage buzzwords Halloween decor. So my plan for doing this was to get really cheap items from the Dollar Tree that sort of are standard to what other people can get and sort of upcycle them into the style that I like and to make them a little bit more pretty. They're pretty good, but let's make them better. So the vibe and style that I want to go for this upcycling is sort of an over-the-garden wall / vintage retro / cottagecore theme, and I think I can work them all into these bases that I got, which I will be showing you now. First is this little pumpkin guy that's also a ghost. He's just hangs up in the back right there and has this like nice flowy material right here, but this plan I have is to turn it into the Pottsville pumpkin ghost from Over the Garden Wall, you know, with that sort of face and the streamer / fabric type body, so this will be perfect for him. Next I got this stack of skeletons. They're supposed to light up, but I'm not sure how they are going to light up, so we'll find that out in a bit. But my sort of plan for this one is to build up around the base with like foam clay or something and just make him look more aged and weathered and cracked by adding a new paint job and some more little details. Just make them look like they're sprouting out of the ground. Finally, for my holy grail of items is this lantern right here. This is actually cheating because it's from the $5 section of the Dollar Tree. But this will be a perfect base for creating a very spooky yet cottagecore lantern. Also adding some more like grown details to the lantern right here with foam clay, and of course adding some fluttering moths because you know me. So those are the 3 items that I have, and I'm going to show you how I decided to upcycle them into the vibe that I'm going for. So let's start with the pumpkin ghost. I simply just started with overlaying some scrap fabric that I had left over, and I cut more strips and I dyed them, well, I tried to dye them green, but they ended up more of a gray, as you'll see later, before stripping the pumpkin naked into his little stick man form. He looks very weird. I sand down his surface before I go ahead and hit him with some primer, just so that it will actually stick to him. Very important with working with this plastic material. Next I go ahead and I paint him this like dull orange. After about 3 coats he was nice and bright, and I went ahead and painted on his details, which is a mixture of a dark green and this sort of beigey yellow color. Just very carefully painted them on. There he is right here. He needs a couple more layers at this point with the paint. But before I do that, I go ahead and take a very thin Sharpie and start outlining the grooves of the pumpkin. This really gives it that cartoon effect that Over the Garden Wall has, and I really liked how this really simple method of making this turned out. I also went ahead and outlined his mouth, teeth, and eyes, and drawn a nose with my thicker Sharpie because my thin one was dying on me. But that also just really made it have that cartoony effect and really made the face pop out. This does take a steady hand, so take your time with it and ignore the secret face on the back. After I was done there, I went ahead and hot glued my strips of fabric. Just overlaid it on top of him until he looks something like this. So for these skeleton heads, it was more of the same process of sort of sanding down the surface so that the clay and paint had something to stick to. So I did that first, before taking my foam clay right here, which is a lightweight foam-based clay that dries sort of like springy, but it's very good for sculpting. It's very cheap, so that's why I use it. I sculpt these sort of little tendrils on the side that looks like vines crawling up the skull, and I just continue doing this until it's sort of fleshed out. I also add little stems for mushrooms that I'm going to add later on. You can sculpt the little mushroom heads separately and hot glue them on. That's what I did. But it really adds some more effects and makes the silhouette look really nice. Here it is all primed. As you can see, I also added some hot glue streaks as well just to make it look a little bit more grimy. The paint palette for this is of course very muted colors with some yellow, green, and red thrown in as well. I start off with a brown wash, which is just acrylic paint that is severely watered down, so that way all of the paint can pool into the crevices and highlight the texture, and then you simply just wipe it away with a towel, or toilet paper is what I'm using. I like that this adds a sort of grungy effect to these skulls and highlights a lot of the texture that we had just sculpted in. I go ahead and paint the eye sockets black again just so they're highlighted, before mixing up some green and starting to paint on the vines. There's a lot of cuts in these time-lapse videos because I learned that I like to paint really close to my face. Anyways, I go ahead and paint on the mushrooms and make them the fly caps with the little white dots, and here we have it. The lantern has a very similar start to these skulls where I just sand down the parts that I want to sculpt on and paint on later and start adding some sausages of foam clay to look like vines. For the lantern, I didn't really have a plan going forward. I just knew I wanted to make it look like it was natural, and of course throw in a little mushroom right there. You can see the little tiny stem, but just adding some vines to add some texture and break up the silhouette a little bit. I got a nice brown coat of paint just to make everything even before spritzing on just a little bit of gold spray paint. To paint this, I did more of the wash technique, but with a very dark, like almost black brown, just in the corners and crevices to make it look very aged and weathered. I wanted this lamp to look like you just fished it out of the garbage from the Victorian century. It was much of the same process for the lantern as it was the skeletons, with just painting the separate pieces. The candle was very hard to get opaque. I had to do like 3 layers. But for the star of the show, of course, is the moths. I just printed these out and cut them out on my silhouette before hot gluing them on to the lantern. Very, very cute. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for watching this video. I am running to get it out as soon as possible as we speak right now, but I just wanted to shout out to my patrons, Brandon and GenericWhiteMale. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to me. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful Halloween.